Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another knife review for you. Today we have the brand new Civivi NOx. This is one I was really excited to get my hands on, to the point that I make it clear, Civivi does send me a lot of stuff, Civivi we, but this one they didn't. I just went out and bought one of these immediately because I really wanted to get my hands on it. Didn't want to wait to go through that process. Really, really awesome little knife, and kind of a departure from Civivi, which I do like a lot. I like seeing them do something a little different. This is a stainless steel frame lock. To my memory, first frame lock under the Civivi brand. Obviously, we does a lot of them in titanium, but it's stainless steel frame lock and Nitro-V steel, which is pretty cool. They have used this steel before in the Ferrum Forge Stinger, which you will see shortly. But yeah, it's a cool little steel. It's pretty good edge retention, excellent corrosion resistance. It's kind of like, basically, I would put it like 14C28N with a bit more corrosion resistance is kind of how I would put it in my experience of using it, having had it on a few knives now. Fairly uncommon in folders, but there have been a few. Yeah, it's just something a little bit different. Definitely has a Civivi look to it. If you glanced at this, you know it's a Civivi. It does harken back to some of their previous models, but as far as the construction and stuff goes, much different. And I think that's pretty darn cool. And it's very reasonably priced at only 64 bucks. Not bad at all, especially for Nitro-V. It's usually on, I wouldn't call it a high-end steel, but it's on some more expensive knives. So let's do some specs and size comparisons before we get too much farther. This is not a terribly large knife. Have a blade length, according to my measurements, 3 inches. They call it 2 3/4. They must just be measuring the cutting edge. It's definitely every bit of 3 inches. As you can see here, these are 1/2 inch squares. Overall length, 6 3/4 inches. Blade thickness, 0.12 inches. Pretty much what you'd expect for a lot of Civivis. Handle thickness, very slim, 0.35 inches. And a weight of 3.1 ounces. So a little bit over that ounce an inch, but really impressive for a stainless steel frame lock. Can't really complain too much about that. Size comparisons, we will bring out, this is a smaller knife, so we're just going to mostly bring out some of the smaller ones until we get to the Civivi. So we have your Spyderco Para 3 and the full-size bug out. I don't happen to own a mini bug out. Probably the mini 940 would have been a good thing to have out here right now, Brian, but I don't. So the 945, whatever we're supposed to call it. Next up, I'll bring out some of the Civivis, the usuals. We have the Backlash, which it's going to be dwarfed by, and the Elementum, which it's pretty similar overall length to the Elementum, but it is a bit of a slimmer knife, I would say, than the Elementum. The Elementum ain't exactly no tank. Two other ones I want to bring out here. We have, as I said, the Ferrum Forge Stinger. This was made by Civivi, or we, and it has the Nitro-V steel. So yeah, just again show they do have some experience with this awesome knife, by the way. I really like it. And lastly, something this kind of reminds me of, much more expensive, but maybe I'll do one of those cheap versus not so much battles to the death between the tactile knife company Rockwall and the NOx, because they do kind of remind me of each other in their kind of intended purpose. By the way, this is the black finish. I really like the way that Civivi has done this kind of black washy sort of finish previously on other knives, like the Gava. I wanted to see if it was the same in stainless, and it is. It doesn't have that as much of that washy effect, but it still has that kind of stonewash sort of black finish. It looks just as good on the stainless as it did in the titanium, so pretty impressed with that. But it does come in a plain stainless as well, if you want that, a plain stonewashed stainless. So yeah, like the looks of it. It is a fairly small knife. It's not huge, as you could see by the measurements, but it's a good kind of gentlemanly size. This blade, though, Nitro-V steel, again, really cool to see that coming out more. It's a steel I do like quite a bit. It's not completely, utterly corrosion resistant, like your LC 200Ns in your Van-X or anything like that, but it's a lot better than most. And being a Civivi, nice hollow grind, 15 thousandths behind the edge, came razor sharp out of the box. Extremely, extremely slicey little knife. I do love that about it. Really no complaints about the blade. It does have a fairly dainty tip on it, but I think you're going to kind of expect that just by sort of looking at it. It's not something you're going to want to go stabbing in car doors with, as I always say. Ergos, pretty good. You definitely are meant to be choked up here, and if you have big fat fingers, you're not going to have room enough for that. But for my hands, it's pretty good. You can definitely feel that pocket clip. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It could cause a hot spot for some people. For me, it's not quite there yet, but I don't know, if I was using this all day long, arduous cutting tasks, it would definitely bother me. Again, I don't think this is the kind of knife you're going to be doing that stuff with, so I'm not going to knock it too much for it, but it is definitely there. If you want to choke back, I can get all 4 fingers on it barely, and I mean barely, but you can. It's definitely meant much more nice to use a little bit more choked up. Again, I think this would be kind of more light duty tasks, so do keep that in mind. How does it carry? Well, pretty darn good. Weight's good, 3.1 ounces, nothing that's really going to bother anybody. Pocket clip tension is awesome, as always. Super easy to get in and out of the pocket. Does have flipper tabs sticking out a little bit, and it does have some jimping. You do feel that when your hand slides past it, but it's so slim that you're not going to be contacting it super often, so that's not a huge concern. But yeah, if you have a delicate little pinky, you will touch that occasionally, but again, not enough to really bother me. What's the action on it like? Kind of, I'm gonna say again, unique for Civivi. That excellent Civivi detent, not bad at all, but it is not super drop shot. It is on bearings. I actually thought, looking at it and the way the action worked, I thought it was on washers, which I thought was another unique thing about it. But then somebody mentioned on a live show that they took theirs apart, and it wasn't, and I hadn't taken this apart yet, and I did, and they're right. Yeah, it is on bearings. Different looking bearings. They look a little bit slimmer. I think that's where I got confused, because they went to a lot of effort to make this slimmer. So they're a little bit slimmer bearings, at least they appear to be. But when you look at it, you look down in it, it looks like washers, but it is not. It's just not, I think it's the lock bar tension and this really, really lightweight blade that, yeah, it's just not super drop shotty. It's gotten better, but I don't think it's ever going to be like a lot of Civivis are. It's just not going to be that way. But it is super smooth. I will give them that. One thing that I'm not going to knock it on, but somebody else pointed out to me, it is pretty sensitive to lock bar tension. If you're pushing on that lock bar, it is a lot harder to get open if you're putting much pressure on that at all. To which my response is, as I often say, don't do that. I give a knife a hard time if it's almost impossible to not touch that lock bar. Like the small Sebenza 21, I didn't, because the pocket clip rested on it and everything, and it was very difficult not to put pressure on the lock bar. It's not hard just to not do that. I reflexively always just kind of put my fingers on the pocket clip anyway when I'm opening a knife this size. If you do that, zero issues. And yeah, that's why I didn't even notice it until somebody pointed it out, because I always just flipped it open like that. But yeah, if you're holding up here, yeah, you got to put a lot of effort to get it open. Still can, but it does increase the effort exponentially. So again, don't do that. What you should do is, if you're looking for kind of a gentlemanly sort of knife that's very easy to get, very common, but still kind of unique, for a Civivi, yeah, I would jump on this. The Nitro-V steel's really cool. If you're a steel nerd, it's a great steel just kind of experiment with and have around for a very, very reasonable price. I like the overall look of it. Yes, it does look very Civivi. If you don't like this aesthetic, their general aesthetic, you're not going to like this, but I like that it's a stainless steel frame lock that's a reasonable weight. It has all that Civivi good quality construction, all that unique steel, super slicey. It does have a few downsides. Yeah, there's going to be a little hot spot from the pocket clip. If you have giant, huge hands and you're worried about touching the lock bar, it will make it more difficult to open. But yeah, other than that, I think it's a great little knife. It's definitely, I try and do for budget knife of the year, I try and have, if possible, just one from each manufacturer. So far, this is probably Civivi's contender. So yeah, because there's always at least one Civivi budget knife of the year. It's just the way the world works. They are all consuming sometimes, but this is a great one. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Brian. Have a good one.